Welcome to Voice Rising with Kara Johnstad. Enjoy weekly conversations with leading luminaries, pioneering visionaries, singers, poets, musicians, and sound healers as we explore the profound role our voice plays on the path to self-realization and global enlightenment. The internationally acclaimed singer, composer, author, healer, recording artist, voice expert, creator of Voice Your Essence, and founder of the School of Voice, Kara Johnstad uses her extraordinary spiritual gifts to empower others. Everything in this world vibrates. Everything has a frequency. A pioneer in the field of voice work and transformational songwriting. Her breakthrough methods are helping thousands of people worldwide fine-tune their body-mind-spirit system and unlock the energetic frequencies of limitless creativity, health, and abundance. Share your voice, ask your questions, join in the conversation. Receive life-changing, positive transformation and rise together to create a sound world. And here's your host, Kara Johnstad.
Hi, everybody. Today we are honored to welcome Mark Nepo, a beloved author, teacher, and poet whose profound wisdom has touched the hearts of countless readers worldwide to the Voice Rising show. Mark's latest book, Falling Down and Getting Up, offers a luminous collection of insights and teachings exploring the journey of transformation through life's ups and downs. And with his ability to turn pain into poetry, Mark enlarges our hearts and invites us to rediscover our inner resilience and strength. So together, let's sit back and let's dive into a beautiful conversation as I welcome Mark to the show. Welcome, Mark. It's so good to have you here today.
Great to be with you again. Thanks so much.
It's a stunning book, Mark. Your new book, Falling Down and Getting Up, it's a gem. I mentioned this to you before the show. I was lucky enough to get a copy before it even went out on the bookshelves out there. And it accompanied me to many places, to little cafes in Paris, to Rome, even, to a park bench somewhere in Berlin. You work a lot on this book, I guess maybe on all your books, but exploring the inner journey and the light that resides within us and how we can nurture that light. So share with us a little bit how we can explore in these times that are not often easy, finding that still point, finding that radiance within. Where's one place we can start? Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I think that first let's talk about for a second or two our time. I mean, there is so much happening right now and so much pain and suffering. And every generation has its particular challenges. And these are ours, and it's our turn. And that's not to minimize the suffering. It's just to say that I feel like every life and every age, we are challenged to make those archetypal choices between love and fear, between going it alone and holding each other up. And so this is our turn. And so I think one of the deep ways is, and all the spiritual traditions offer tools for this, which seem abstract until we need them. Then they're very real. Yeah. And I think the perennial one, that I feel so much, is how do we restore our direct connection to life? I feel like because of so many things going on in the modern world, the cocoon of technology, the insulation of social media, of course, in the aftermath of the pandemic. But, here we are, and I've been astonished to see the violence, the vitriol, the hiding in our own corners really reflects to me that we've lost direct touch with life, because if we have a direct connection with life, we have a reverence for life.
Yes.
And if we have a reverence for life, we can't do harm. And so as simple as it seems, how do we open our heart? So let's move to that. How do we restore that direct connection to life? Well, I think I know for me, and as you know, what I share are examples, not instructions. I think that, we're challenged every day to open our heart when it closes, to lean in when the difficulties of life push us away, to hold nothing back, to stop. Often when I am troubled or weighted or confused or afraid, I simply try to open my heart completely and give my full heart's attention to the nearest piece of life until it becomes my teacher.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. I heard you mention on a talk show, one of those things, talk shows, you were talking about the flower and how it roots in the dark earth and then how it really, literally, the blossoming comes from unfolding from the inside out. I just thought that was a really beautiful image. I was just thinking of, I think people have lost that connection walking on the earth. Suddenly, even if you walk outside, it's with insulated, tennis shoes that lift us up. We forget to lean down and put the soil through our fingers unless maybe we're a farmer. All the food in the shops are normed sized apples. We don't even see a little place where the worm might have entered. It's like everything is gotten so polished. Again, unless we have the gift of, some of us do have a little apple orchard behind our house, or maybe we have the ability to walk on a country road, but not everybody. I live in a city and I don't have a yard, and it's so important for us to, like you said, you said it so beautifully, to open wherever we are, our hearts totally to whatever is, alive and present. And
it seems that another kind of like law of spiritual physics, if you will, is that that great love and great suffering will break us open if we resist it. And often, in my journey years ago, decades ago, and I almost died from a rare form of lymphoma, and so that at that time was the transformative opening for me. But it's not always difficulty. It's not always the things that are life-threatening. We can be broken open by tenderness and by surprise and beauty and wonder. So it's not just about suffering; it's about grace as well. And I think that's our challenge is, once our hearts are opened, is to keep them open. The great Sufi teacher Hazrat Inayat Khan said, God breaks the heart again and again and again until it stays open.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Mark, you write in your book, you have a beautiful image which talks about that healing begins by removing what's in the way within us. And then you also connect this, which I think is very important to these times, while justice begins by removing what's in the way between us. I thought that was very profound, because we talk about healing, healing the world, healing the community, and then at the same time we need to heal us and all the trauma, the work that's going on. But that healing, is our own journey, and yet justice is healing what is coming, what's blocking us between each other. I think it was just a very beautiful image. So speak to that.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think it came from, or how I stumbled on that insight was that I discovered that the word war goes back to an Indo-European word, which means confusion. And so all conflict and war stems from confusion. And so as I was reflecting on that, it did occur to me that yes, that healing and justice at their best, we hope they're the same thing. And often one will appear before the other, or one will lead to the other. So sometimes in our very human existence, in the moment, we have to choose one over the other for the moment. Mm-hmm. And so this notion that, yes, if we want to reduce violence in the world, we can begin by clearing the confusion within us. Mm-hmm. And yes, and justice is clearing the confusion between us. And so in order to make any ground on either healing or justice, we have to start listening more than talking, and we have to ask questions more than making declarations. And you know, I think one that I often think especially with children these days, but really with anyone, you know, I've come to a question I like to invite, especially a young person, is to say, what's it like to be you?
That's a beautiful question.
Like? Yeah, what's it like to be you? How does that feel? You know, and this came, I had an amazing teaching moment, and, you know, I so love to be in these circles, and where my job, like in my writing, I feel, is to open a heart space through which others hopefully can find their own gifts and their own wisdom. And when that happens, especially in person, then who's the teacher just moves around the room, and it doesn't get any better than that. And so I was teaching in Charleston a few years ago, and I had invited people to be in pairs and to express one truth that they return to. And there was a wonderful, I always am moved by this, there was a grown mother and a grown son who were going through the weekend together. And the son his name was Jack, and MJ was the mother, and he was about, I'd say, 28 or 9, a very tall young man. And while they were working, they paused. Everyone was in conversation, but they paused and came over to me, and the mother, MJ, said, I feel like we're stuck because I've shared what I hold true for me, but Jack said he doesn't think anything is true. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, and I, you know, from my heart, I said, well, I'm asking you to listen to each other. So if your son had moved to China, what kind of questions would you ask him? What's it like to live in China? How did you come to live there? What's the climate like there? Do you like living there? Do you think you'll live there a long time? Well, your son has told you that he lives in the land where nothing is true.
Yeah.
How can you ask about that? What's it like to live in the land where nothing is true?
Yeah.
How did you come to live there? And Big Jack, who was towering over me, had this kind of quiet smile on his face. And so this was amazing, Kara, because what happened later in the weekend was that there was another mother in the group who she was there in grief because she had lost her son of a similar age to a car accident. And so at a later point in the weekend, she just, in her grief, burst into tears and left the room. We took a break, making sure she was okay. And when she came back into the room, Big Jack was the first one to run over and scoop her up in his arms.
Oh, precious.
And by the end of the retreat, you know, when we were saying goodbye, I asked Jack if I could share something with him. He said yes. And I said, you know, whatever it is that made you run to hold that grieving mother, that is true.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you can't, all of this to say, as an example of that being authentic is the gateway to spirit. You know, after all these years, I really feel like one of the rewards for being thorough and authentic is that it hollows us out to receive life other than us. And so to be authentic will help you and I have an integral relationship. And being authentic will also allow me to experience oneness. It's like a prerequisite for oneness.
Yeah. I know you love words, right? You always, and I love words too. So I want to share with you something that I love the sound of words. And so in German, the word for teacher is Lehrer. Ein Lehrer is the teacher. But the word for emptiness is leer. And I always love that image. And I thought of you while you're in your circles, because there's a sense that a teacher, to be a good teacher, you have to be empty so that you can be receptive, so you can be listening, so you can be reflective, right? So leer, emptiness, it's spelled differently, but the sound is exactly the same. Teacher is Lehrer, and spaciousness, or to be empty, to be void, is leer. So,
that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I think that's what is so. You said it also at the beginning of the show. These are not instructions; these are experiences shared, and everybody's, like you said, Jack was coming from a different place, and in his land, he had different, maybe. How do I say that? Maybe perceptions of even what is true or what's not true, or as we all explore this life, right? But what I appreciate always, and what we can all learn from this work is, like you said, to show up with what is, and not with how it should be or could be or how we want it to be, but what is, right? That it is. Maybe it's rainy and wet outside, so that's what it is. It doesn't do us much good to try to figure out like how it should be different, because it's rainy, so we need some rain boots. And if somebody is if somebody's struggling with grief, it doesn't do any good to say, well, actually, you should be over this by now. It's been 5 years. It doesn't really matter, because it's there. It's present. It's
there. And I think that wonderfully leads to the theme of falling down and getting up. That no one signs up to fall down, but
right.
You can't escape it, just like you can't escape gravity. And so, it's so interesting that falling down and getting up, if we back up enough over a lifetime, it's a dance. And so the question is, what is our rhythm of falling down and getting up? And how can we do it well? And, I remember that, and where the title comes from, as you know, is that in medieval monks, when asked how they practiced their faith, said by falling down and getting up, which I love. And then, when I was back in my cancer journey, and I had woken up after a surgery, and I had a rib removed in my back, and there was a very kind of gruff but also tender nurse hovering over me, and she said, I barely woke up, and she said, well, get up, we're going to walk. And I thought, like, we're going to walk? How? Maybe you're going to walk.
Can you carry me?
And then she leaned closer and she whispered, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah.
Which is the rhythm of falling down and getting up. And then I later learned that many cultures have aphorisms for this kind of notion. And in Japanese, there's an expression, a proverb that says, fall down 7, get up 8. And then I learned in doing the book and researching that in the Upanishads, the ancient anonymous Hindu texts, sacred texts, which are filled with metaphors, there is a metaphor for spiritual growth where they talk about that how a caterpillar moves. It bunches up, in which it moves back in order to move forward. And it bunches up in order to move forward. And in the Upanishads, they say this is the rhythm of spiritual growth. So all of it is this rhythm of falling down and getting up, of facing the truth of what is, whatever that might be. And in fact, in our modern world, we suffer. There is a different kind of suffering that comes from resisting suffering.
Yeah. That is a bit of truth resonating here, right? It's we don't want to simply accept that the caterpillar bunches up, and before it can even go forward or become a butterfly. Or for me, in the last year, I've been looking at the turtle, slow and steady, and how this ancient turtle really literally outlives many animals, right? Slow and steady. Or the oak tree, slow and steady. That oak tree is not growing very fast, and yet it's hundreds of years old. Whereas another tree that is growing quickly might not live as long. But yet we want quick success. We want to heal quickly. We want everything to be fast and quick and available right now. We want. I have it now with the social media and the emails. It's like we used to get emails that were quicker than the letters, right? We used to send letters. It would take 6-7 days from Europe to get to America, a letter, or if not longer. And then there were emails. Well, now there's a message, and if you don't hit the respond right away, many people think, what's wrong? Like, I just WhatsApped you. Right? And it's good. It's good when we get away from that distraction.
Well, because there's also in our modern world, there are certain advantages to technology being immediate, but often, and we can see it even in the intense reaction to what's going on in Israel. No one is reflecting. Everyone is reacting so quickly that they're not taking in. There's no time for reflection before speaking. And, in contrast to that, and I learned this along the way, that back in Lincoln's time, when he gave his second inaugural address, it was handwritten, and they had scribes copy it by hand. And the way it was shared is those copies were sent across the country by Pony Express. So it didn't reach the West Coast for like 3 weeks. So there was built-in reflection time. And I think one of the problems that we suffer is, it's one thing to start with our 24/7 news cycle is I only need to see one image once that reaches my heart, and then I need to work with it. I don't need to see the same image 100 times. The only value is for 100 people to see it once, not for you and me to see it 100 times. And so part of our challenge is how to turn things off.
Part of the challenge, how to turn things off, and how to also, you talk about that often in your work too. It's depending on, something can be very painful, and yet if you pull out, there's an expansiveness. There's something beautiful. I think I remember it, like you talk about, the center of a wheel, and everybody has different perspectives. I mean, the thing is, like with the war in Israel, we have many wars happening. It's not only between Israel and Gaza. We have also Ukraine and Russia. And then and if we're so in it, in this news cycle, and then there's the pain and the hostages and the release, and it's so tragic. It is tragic. It's horrific.
Yes.
And at the same time, it's what you're saying, and I totally agree, to take time for reflection, and also take time. What is the history? What is, can we pull back and see how this conflict has become so devastating, right? Because it has roots, and like all conflicts do. And how can we meet this moment and not go into divisiveness, and try to find things that bring us together as a humanity? And unfortunately, what I'm seeing here is just we're getting, because of the reactionism, many more. It's just becoming so divided. So what would your thoughts be? Because you talked about this. We're about to head into break, but you can go longer. I promise you we won't cut it off. But what are your thoughts? What do we do? You were talking about justice. I love we can play with just us and justice, right? Just us. But what can we do to remember that we bleed the same blood, that our hearts beat, and when we breathe the same air. The wind that comes from Michigan ends up in Gaza, in Berlin, in Kiev, in Moscow, right? So what if you were a peacemaker, which you are, yes.
Well, yeah, and I don't have any answers. It's maddening. And I can just speak to it, but I feel deeply that, we have to, again, regain our, the removal of everything between our hearts and each other.
Yeah.
And when that, even step by step, and I think it does matter what happens everywhere, because in a lot of ways, if you look at humanity as a global body, then every soul is a cell in that body.
Yes.
And so it matters. Our conversation matters. Even if another people that we are happening right now, their heartfelt conversation matters to try to keep humanity more healthy than toxic. In addition to however we address particular points of stress and violence and inhumanity. And I think that, that is I think that evil is when we deliberately hurt, knowingly hurt another.
Yes.
I think we in addition to, a lot of suffering in the world is suffering for human beings is like erosion is for nature. And that cycle can't be avoided. Then you add on to that the ways in which we inadvertently hurt each other, because I try to bring you soup and I spill it on you, Then I say, I'm sorry, and then I try to help make up for what I spilled. All of that is in the purview of humanity. But when we deliberately hurt other life, that to me is evil. And so I feel like up to that point, we can learn from each other, from our heart wisdom, and then, but with people who are evil, I think that it's important to quarantine their evil. So even for me and the circles that I convene with, all of the, even before these current wars, but all the stridency in America and the insane not listening to each other, I have had to develop an ethic where I welcome all views into the circle, except the only exception is those intent on destroying the circle. And I don't know how else to do that. So, and at the same time, in doing that, we can't become that which we are trying to, we can't become the evil that we're confronting.
Well, it's a little bit like I used to say, I had to learn to weed the garden. In the beginning, you want everything to be part of the garden, the beautiful garden, the wild garden. At some point, you have to realize you have a responsibility. And it's a very hard line, because you don't want to bring in judgment, that, you want people to be able to feel free to speak their different perceptions and thoughts. And at the same time, like you said, it's, it only takes a tiny bit of, cyanide in the tea to kill it, to kill someone. It only takes one unreflected remark to really destroy a circle or a place of trust, a place of holding space.
I know we're coming to a break, but there's two stories that when we get on the other side, I'll continue with.
Okay, let's do that. You hold the two stories. We're going to be reflecting on the beauty of this conversation and take a small break for our sponsors. And everybody else, you stay tuned.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
With happy clients all over the world, Kara Johnstad knows that your voice is the missing link to more authenticity, abundance, creativity, and health. An internationally acclaimed voice expert, Kara's breakthrough methods have helped thousands of people successfully heal their voice wounds and extinguish the story of self-doubt and shyness forever. Join in group trainings, attend online sessions, schedule one-on-one time, and invite Kara to work with your organization and community. Get started today. Go to www.karajohnstad.com and receive a special guided meditation designed to fine-tune your inner voice and welcome you on the voice journey.
This is Kathy Beal, host of Celestial Compass, featuring astrology you can use. Celestial Compass points you to what's going on in the sky and what you can do with it down here on Earth. We also explore fun, effective, and cosmic tools for navigating this adventure we call life. Join me the first and third Monday of the month at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Celestial Compass. It's enlightening, entertaining, and empowering.
Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for
summer break because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing
a job and getting back on his feet?
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org, brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Voice Rising. If you're enjoying the show today, please subscribe and leave us a comment on your favorite streaming platform because it helps us to bring you more inspirational content, including wonderful guests such as Mark Nepo, who's here with us today to talk about his new book, Falling Down and Getting Up. So welcome back, Mark. And now we're ready for your 2 incredible stories.
Yeah, so thank you. So as we're talking about these conundrums about moving in the world together out of heart and grace, and so there's one story is a parable about a gardener who he actually, this was in Chinese history, he was a gardener for a general during the building of the Great Wall of China, and the gardener the general who was off in war, came back and he brought these rare seeds to his gardener. Mm-hmm. And the gardener thanked him. And then when he was alone, he had his assistant and he said, what do you think? I don't know what to do with these seeds because they're seeds that come from blood. They're seeds, while they're rare, and we would never even have them in this part of the world. Are they tainted because they come from violence and death? Or can I plant them and will something good grow from them? And and his assistant says, well, I don't think you should plant them. And then after a while, his assistant falls asleep. But the gardener, with his faith in life, he plants them anyway in hopes that something will grow. And, that's a conundrum of how far does that, does the touch that is destructive, how far does it corrupt, or can it carry something that it can't corrupt? And the other story is a beautiful parable about 2 monks who are, they're told that if they study long and hard, they will be able to one day keep an appointment with Buddha at the top of a mountain. So they work together, they study long and hard, and they feel like the day has come, and they start out. And when they're halfway up the mountain, one of the 2 breaks his leg. So the other intends, well, I'll make him comfortable, and we spend the night. but he's hoping in the morning to keep his appointment with Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the morning, it's not so easy because the one who broke his leg has a fever, and it's not so simple. As just leaving him there. And so the parable ends there, and of course asks the question, what would you do? And what I think this parable holds is that in any age where we have more people intent on keeping their appointment at the top of the mountain, whatever it is, than helping their broken other, we have an age that can engender cruelty. And whenever we have more people who will discover that tending their broken other is the summit, we have an age that can engender compassion.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what you put on top of that mountain. It could be safety, financial security, family, ambition, that promotion, whatever it might be. If we insist on keeping that appointment, no matter what, well, we're capable of cruelty, and I think that we face these choices every single day, and I think for me in my life, and there are times, and it's not a blanketed absolute one way or the other. After all, in the story of Jesus, when he comes into the cave with lepers, when they all realize he can heal, he's just swamped with people, and he says, "Heal yourselves. Give me a break. Leave me alone." Yeah. So it's not all or nothing, but how do we? I think that I've learned over time in my life that working for what I want is often an apprenticeship for working with what I'm given, which is where my true gifts show themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy because every day, and I mean, recently I saw also pictures of the outskirts of LA, just hundreds of people homeless, lining the streets going into the city, and then people driving by with their lattes and their cappuccinos at the same time. That's where we get numb to all the pain, because if you would stop at every single person's home to try to help, but then you don't, and then you go by, and then suddenly you are numbed out. You are basically numbing yourself. Again, we get back to the top of the show of how do we get back to living with an open heart without, of course, going into exhaustion of, like you say, like Jesus saying, heal yourself, and it's a fine line, because we all have to tend to ourselves, and we all have to tend to the other. And yet I think you're right about the summit. If we're all, it doesn't matter if it's Buddha or if it's your stocks or Wall Street, we have to, I always say to my people, it's like we have to take care of our corner. We can't heal the whole world, but we can be kind to our neighbors. We can, we can work on where we're standing.
Yes, and I think that by healing the particular thing in front of us and giving, we are contributing to mending the world. And this leads to another story that, so I was teaching, one of the places I teach now is in the Modern Elder Academy. There's a campus in Mexico, and last time I was there, I was there a day early. I always go a day early to these things. And so before we started, someone else who was going to be in the group, a woman, was there, and she was, respectful that we hadn't started yet. We had breakfast, and we went to walk in different ways on the shore, on the beach. And then after a while, she came over to me, and she said, I'm sorry, I don't want to impose, but something just happened, and I don't know what to make of it. Can I share it with you? Mm-hmm. And that question alone is a way in to all of us, to other life. Something happened. I don't know what to make of it. Can I share it with you? I just love that. And so what she shared is that she had been walking in the other direction, and she had walked about 5 minutes, and there was a sizable fish on the sand, alive, but out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
And so she found a way to put it back in the water. I mean, at first she thought, gee, if I don't do this, it'll die, and maybe I can help it at least for part of it. And then she did get it back in the water, and she walked another 5 minutes or so, and there was another one.
Mm.
And so she didn't know whether to feel despair that we can't save every fish. And what our conversation led to, and I felt very deeply, was, no, we can't. We will never be able to save every fish.
Mm-hmm.
But we're here to save the fish that's in front of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all we can do. And, a lot of times in our mental capacity, we'll see the futility that, well, there'll always be another fish, so therefore why should I bother at all? Mm-hmm. And that is the black hole of the mind without the heart. Because it is about saving, and I think that this is like Camus' The Myth of Sisyphus. We have to love the journey and the struggle, and where the noble journey is, we save the one fish that's in front of us. That's all we can do.
That's all we can do. And I think that also helps us to open our hearts even more, because I think a lot of people are getting very overwhelmed. When they do see the news cycle, or they see the school shootings, or the shopping malls are now starting to be guarded by police or whatever. They're so overwhelmed that they only, again, have the choice. Do I shut down and go numb? Do I close off my heart? Or do I feel frustrated that I can't possibly do everything? And if we remember that we can do, if we look what's in front of us, be present to what is in the room or in the community, but we can't. Maybe we can't save the whole planet, but we can choose not to use plastic, grocery bags, or we make small steps, and each small step helps us come back to what you were saying at the beginning of the show, to start being connected again to life and to the earth, right?
Yes, and each giving is a synapse that allows spirit and life force to circulate in the living world. It's not, it is between you and I if I help you up and you fall, and it's a synapse in this circulatory system of kindness and goodness. And I think, there's a small poem of mine, which is just a few lines, but in it goes like this: the mystery that is that whoever shows up when we dare to give has exactly what we need hidden in their trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And so by giving, I've discovered over time that, our mind, as amazing as our minds are, it can only go so far. And that when my mind can't go any further, if I give in any direction, I can see more clearly. And I discovered that quite by accident. I was troubled by something, I can't remember even what, when a friend needed me, and I dropped everything to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I returned to whatever the problem was, everything was much more clear. And the only thing that had happened that was different was that I was giving. So there is a strength and clarity that come from kindness.
And gratitude, right? Yeah, kindness.
Yeah.
And you talk also, which I enjoy, you also talked in the book about that not only the beauty of course, of giving, but then again, the art of receiving that many people are not able to receive, which also has to do with our heart being open. So the one side of the coin is to say yes to what can I give in this moment? How can I show up? How can I hold space? How can I maybe ask a question to open that, to facilitate the conversation? But the other one is if I am numb or if I am struggling, right? How can I maybe reach out and say, hey, I need you?
Absolutely. And I think there's a chapter in the book about the endless vows. And what I try to explore there is that since the beginning of time, there have been these 4 vows that, if entered with an open heart, will always return us to our connection to life and to what matters. And they are help, thank you, I'm sorry, and I love you. Mm-hmm. Help, thank you, I'm sorry, and I love you. And holding and listening are 2 of the oldest medicines known to humankind. I mean, I can't think of a time that I have held or been held that wasn't restoring, or a time that I truly listened or was listened to, even if what I was hearing was difficult, if it was true, that also wasn't healing.
Yeah.
So the question for our listeners, is what is your current status with regard to these vows? Help, thank you, I'm sorry, and I love you. Is there which one is most difficult for you? How can you take a step, in a personal way, to deepen these vows in your life? These are practices that strengthen our spirit and open our heart.
Yeah, you have at the end of each chapter, there are always questions, a question for ourselves to walk with and to journal with and to savor maybe and to work with. And then also the invitation to work with a beloved or a partner, a friend, and to come into conversation. So again, and you also mentioned this in the book, this beauty, this dance between solitude and community, and how we need both, right? There's the dance between being visible, but you don't want to be in the spotlight so much that you get burned in the spotlight, right? So this dance between the 2.
Yeah, and the great, I mean, this is a very natural rhythm. We do need both. Whether you think you're an introvert or an extrovert, you still need both. And I remember being in high school so many decades ago, but and feeling confused because I wanted to be included in all the parties like any teenager. And as soon as I was there, I couldn't wait to be alone.
Right.
And then I thought, what's wrong with me? But only to learn later in life that there is this rhythm. And great teachers of this rhythm between solitude and community, between surface and depth, are whales and dolphins. Because we take for granted, but they are air-breathing creatures, which is remarkable. It's a miracle. And so they have to break surface or they will die.
Yeah.
And their bodies, their mammoth bodies, have to be immersed in the deep, because if they're out of the deep too long, they will die. So the question is not where do they live? They have to live in both. The question is, what is their rhythm? What is their rhythm between the depth and the surface? And for humans, for spirits and bodies and time on earth, this is our rhythm between solitude and community. As much as we love the deep, we're air-breathing creatures. We can't stay down there permanently or we will die. And likewise, we need to breach into the world, but if we don't periodically get immersed in the deep, we also will die. And so, again, a question for our listeners is, so right now in your life? Are you too much in the deep or too much in the world? What do you need to do to find your healthy balance?
Yeah, what do you need to do to find your healthy balance? You also have, I'm sure you remember this, Mark, but you have also, you call it the 4 trusts that I have here that are very beautiful. Trust in the common presence of all things. Trust in the fact that no matter how we split, we will regenerate and heal. Do you want me to continue, or do you want to do the other two?
Please.
Trust in the blessing. I love this. Trust in the blessing that true intimacy will open us to oneness, and trust that what churns up our bottom only deepens our flow. Some rivers deepen as they age. And as a lover for words, I always say that intimacy is when we're in time with the other person in our space, right? So when we can be in that presence of no matter where they are. I mean, when we can breathe in that same time, there's an intimacy that happens. And when we're not in sync with the timing or in the presence, we're not intimate.
Yeah.
That's my thing. Intimate and in time. Exactly. Yeah. But the 4 trusts, I love this also. Trust in that which churns up our bottom only deepens our flow. It's a pretty profound thing.
Oh, well, thank you. And I think that, again, I invite people to if these things speak to anyone, to personalize them for yourself, because we all need reliable truths to return to when the chaos, and this is one other kind of metaphor that has been helpful about surface and depth. And that's if you look at the ocean, or a lake or any body of water, the top portion of that water is always disturbed by weather.
Yeah.
That's the part of us, that's our psychology, that's the part of us that meets the world. And if all you do is stay in that top layer of water, you're going to be bounced around all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But remembering it's all one water, you can't tell where the surface stops and the deep begins. But when we not retreat from the surface, but when we can feel the depth as well as the surface, things are right-sized, things are softened, things go slower, like you were saying, slow and steady. That is the ocean or the depth of our spirit, the depth of being. So, our practice is, things that are alarming or disturbing draw us to the surface. But how do we, after being drawn to the surface, not retreat, but also extend back into the deep? So we feel both the depth and the surface. We're in our spirit and our psychology. And I think that is a practice that no one can do all the time. And so, we're always course correcting. It's always a practice of return.
Fine tuning. Exactly. Course correcting and allowing ourselves, and there's a lot of beautiful passages. So I've already said there's a lot of beautiful passages. So for all our beautiful listeners, you must go and get this book, Falling Down and Getting Up, from Mark, because it's one of these books where you probably won't read it in one sitting, because every page is filled with profound wisdom and beautiful questions and moments where one can sit and ponder and reflect and deepen the practice. And I think it's a beautiful book to have close by. I also think it's a beautiful book to gift to each other, so that we can come into holding space for each other, into deeper listening, which we all need, right? I think I don't know. I've been very blessed, Mark. I think I have. I don't know if I have all your books, but I'm sure I have at least 7 of them close by.
Oh, thank you.
And I recently even sorted out books, and believe me, yours were not any of them that went into the boxes to sort out. So I thank you so much for being with me today, with us today. I thank you for, I guess, in a crazy way, for humanity, for being one of those shining lights that is able to guide us in these times and to offer practices where we can integrate and try to get out of division and try to pull together and see our common humanity and our common oneness.
Well, thank you so much. And it's a joy to be with you again and to be a part of your good work. Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay, so much success for the new book. And for those who are joining us, the next show, we're going to be with Christina Donnell. And she's going to talk about encounters with living language. And as you know, I love the voice path, and I love language, and I love words. So it's going to be a beautiful show. And again, go get Mark's new book, Falling Down and Getting Up. Bye-bye, Mark.
Bye-bye. Thank you.